Welcome another session of NTalks second edition. Today we focus on supply chain visibility in container shipping. Visibility is not longer just about tracking boxes, it's about assessing better data, enabling collaboration and syncing in networks rather than isolate flows. We are very pleased to welcome today Tore Pedersen, Managing Director and Chairman at Marlowe. Jan has decades of experience in maritime innovation and logistics systems, and today he will guide us through the technologies, standards, and collaborative strategies that are shaping visibility across global supply chains. Hello, Jan. Great to have you with us. And before we begin your presentation, would you like to briefly introduce yourselves to our audience?
Just a second, I'll make sure that I'm doing the sharing of the things correctly.
Perfect.
Can you see this now?
I don't. Still not? Yeah, no.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Tore Pedersen. As you can see from my hair, I'm an old man, relatively speaking, and I've been working in transport and logistics since the last 30 years, mostly in the maritime sector, but also in road. So when Jaakko Forsberg, who is now part of the audience here, gave his presentation on Monday, one of the things he used as an example was the 3M logistics activities, and Jaakko and I had the pleasure of participating in developing those things. And those things were actually the developments that led to the forming of Mixmove, which is now a company with most of its employees in Portugal. And the maritime activities goes back to the period in which we were working in the 90s to try to get cargo from land to sea in Europe. And when we were then developing hardware for moving cargo fast between ship and shore, we were able to do that at 1,000 TEUs per hour, while we were then told that the containers, once they were on shore, had to wait for 2 weeks. So at that time, we started to develop information system for managing end-to-end logistics. And in a variety of settings, we've been working on that activity since. And I took the liberty, Jaakko, to pick up on the illustration that you made, because the visibility in maritime shipping is not necessarily an empty or importance on its own. As Luis said also, it's really a basis for making sure that cargo gets properly from end to end in a controlled, proper fashion. But when we have to look at that, we also have to consider the fact that there are a few container terminals around, and there are a number of container liner operations. Even though they are less than the carrier on land, it's still a relatively complex picture. And just a second. The other element in this is that there are quite a number of standards that we need to relate to. Most of them are from industries, but Jaakko mentioned GS1 as a standard being used for identifying transport units and containers and all that stuff. The standards which are mostly promoted at the container shipping is the SMDG standards. There is essentially a group or an interest group relating to container transportation that has developed this on the basis of UN CFACT activities, but adapted to the needs of the container shipping community. Dealing with these standards have been an issue since I started out 30 years ago, and it's all about interoperability. Collaboration requires interoperability, and I've been party in developing standards for these types of things and also in converting between standards. But before we enter into other things about collaboration, we need to refer to the Digital Transport and Logistics Forum's activities, which were the latest effort from the Commission to really try to enable people to interoperate with quite a set of activities relating to semantics. And those activities have been further explored in the project Phoenix and Federated. There are other initiatives as well, trying to deal with interoperability more or less in line with some of the DTLF activities, and one is now having large initiatives going on to really working on those. One of them is Twin, which I'll get back to it later in the talk. Another is what they call data spaces, in which Gaia X is one example. When you collaborate, you also have to communicate. And this illustration was made about 10 years ago when activities in the area of public procurement ended up with standards supported by the European Commission. And one of those is the infrastructure for information exchange called e-delivery, which is initially used by companies for public procurement across Europe, but also are now getting more and more traction relating to logistics. And this illustration indicates that, yes, it is possible to communicate between these standards. And the mechanisms illustrated here is that before you, for example, communicate from GS1 to NeilNet or SMDG, you first create a, quote, ISO 19845 version of that information, so that you are not directly translating from one to the other here. You're always translating between the common format indicated here as 19845 ISO. And that ISO standard for information exchange in logistics was essentially developed in a number of European R&D projects some time back. Now, we may be in somebody's ears getting finally to the point here, and I'm really asking this question to all of you. For whom is this information useful? Because it says that a ship with a certain container on board has left Singapore on April 30th at 8:15, and it's expected to arrive in Port of Sines on the 8th of June at 2:30 in the afternoon. I don't expect you guys to answer since you're all muted, but the immediate reaction from my part is that I couldn't care less, because I have no understanding in which context this information is being placed. Because as a single entity of information, it's pretty useless. I worked with people in the car industry some time back, and they said that we had now introduced a solution for tracking in our supply chains, but we are now spending as much time finding out whether that track information is right or wrong as we previously did for finding out how things were progressing on a manual basis. Because this information is only useful if we have a plan to compare it with. And in this situation, then we really need to look into who are engaged, not as individual companies, but which roles are engaged in relating to both collaboration and provisioning of information regarding visibility. And I would, for some of you, you have seen my illustrations before. These boxes is from a methodology that was developed many years ago, and the boxes, the sides of the boxes have meaning. It means that on the left-hand side you have input that is converted to output on the right-hand side, controlled by information on top, performed by the organization, in this case shown from below. And I will not go through all of these in detail, but I will just say that the activity of those who are managing shipments, essentially planning them, and then that includes sending out bookings to potential service providers and getting confirmations back. Maybe rejections, but at least those rejections only result in the fact that you have to find other services and book them again. But when it comes then to actually operating the activities, the quote only thing that a shipper or transport logistics client is doing is monitor the operation, monitoring the movements. That's the only thing that this organization can do. And that is then using status that is being provided by those who are performing the services and comparing that with the plans that you actually have been creating. And then you might find whether there's a deviation or not, or you'll eventually get a proof that cargo was delivered, proof of delivery, so that you can complete pay and all these things related to it. The next role is what we, in a project called iCargo many times ago, called Freight Services Integrator. And that is those who are really providing integrated logistics services. Freight forwarders is another word for this. And again, we will not spend much time going through the details here, but there is also here an activity relating to planning and executing those activities. And as we also here see, is that such organizations normally, at least in the role of freight forwarder, do not perform physical transport, meaning that they also just monitor and then compare status with the plan. Then the third actor involved here is then those who are providing individual services. And in this situation, you're getting to the point when you are executing and then you are providing status. There is no monitor thing here, in other than monitoring your own activities, is really executing and providing status. So everything to do with providing the information which is meaningful in the form of creating visibility has to be performed by those who are providing individual information transport services. In a recent discussion, Jaakko and I, we found that it might be important to try to distinguish between an event and a status, because when I'm talking about status in my previous models, it's really about situation whereby, for example, a transport operation is on schedule or not. So it's either on schedule or it's not on schedule. Those are two, shall we say, instances of a status for being on time or not. Obviously, you can improve that by talking about how much it is being delayed or what the deviation is. But in principle, the status is that it is delayed or it is on time. And while an event in this case is something that happens as an instant, for example, a parcel was scanned and placed on a pallet, or a ship left a port. That's an event. The status is it left on time. When we're talking about visibility, it's about visibility of what? Because it doesn't really matter if you know the movement of the ship, if you don't know what's inside it. So if you really want to have the ability to follow a parcel and how it's moved through a logistics operation, you really need to have the identity of that box. And the relationships that are then, in this case, creating between the box and the pallet is creating when the box is scanned and placed on the pallet. And by that, you are really saying that this pallet consists of a number of boxes, number of parcels. Similar, you would do it then when you are actually placing the pallets in containers. You are similarly either automatically or manually recording that operation, meaning that once that is finished, you know that this container with this ID have these pallets with these parcels inside it. And finally, when the container is loading onto the vessel, that is recorded either manually or automatically, so that you know which containers are on board the vessel. And with this process completed, you will also know exactly what information is on the vessel, what cargo is on the vessel. So now by following the movement of the vessel, you're actually also able to follow the movement of the cargo. Luis talked about collaboration, and we also need to be aware of the fact that not everybody knows everything. In this example, the freight forwarder knows exactly where cargo is supposed to go, which transport services it's supposed to be using. But in a normal situation, the shipping line is only informed about how many containers and the idea of the containers, but not about the content of the container. So we have to be careful when we are really trying to, again, create conditions for collaboration. And in this example, we had a situation whereby the port had a loading list, essentially only a list of container numbers that you were supposed to be loaded from a ship at one given time. The people who were who knew that where cargo was supposed to go were the combined transport provider. And by enabling the ability to enrich this comprod message with a loading list with more information about the cargo, the port was able to take information about where cargo was supposed to move into account when unloading the cargo, thereby increasing their efficiency at about 20%, meaning that they could have 20% more cargo without doing anything with any of the resources in the port. Sorry, that was backwards. I looked previously about manual registration of containers onto ships and parcels into containers. Those were really considering only a very traditional, or not traditional maybe, but at least the typical fact that you have barcodes giving the identities of the parcels and the pallets. Lately, more and more, quote, smart devices are being developed for placing on the containers, both in the forms of only being there for tracking, but also for combining the ability of sealing the containers with keeping valuable information about what's inside and all that stuff in the seal, as in this illustration here. And this development has gradually led to a new type of container. Taylor is only one of those companies who are doing this. You may find a long list of providers, including Maersk, developing their own containers, and also a number of others who are then carefully and consciously combining boxes with these types of devices in a coherent package so that they may provide capabilities as if they were truly integrated, that which is the case with Taylor. There are a large number of companies dealing in this business, and some of the providers of technology is here shown in the middle. That list is probably growing as we speak, and I'm pretty sure that I have not been able to find all of those. I have found those who are primarily providing visibility, and these companies are then found again on a very interesting type of presentation here, because this is essentially a map trying to show the capabilities of a number of providers relating to transport and logistics. And if you look at one of these lines, you'll find all of the names that I have showed in this illustration, and meaning that those at least are those companies that have been recognized sufficiently to be placed in this map showing the capability of computer information systems. Those on the right here do not have visibility as a key capability. They are mostly dealing with full-fledged end-to-end transport management, but they have, by then definition, visibility as a byproduct. Despite the fact that there are so many people out there, about 2 years ago, RISE, a research institution in Sweden, and another research institution in Singapore started to develop what they call here a virtual watchtower network. And the idea and the business driving force behind this is that despite the fact that there are many, or maybe because of the fact that there are many, and you have to relate to many if you are really going to have a full-fledged information about the complete operation of a logistics solution, then many of the shippers here were really enthusiastic about a more even higher level visibility solution. And this film that I will show in a second really is the high level ambition behind the virtual watchtower.
The Virtual Watchtower Network, the VWT, is a solution designed to raise visibility in end-to-end supply chains. As a cargo owner-driven port-centric partnership, the Virtual Watchtower is a machine-powered solution to secure on-time deliveries of orders to customers all over the world. Here's an example of how it works. 10 containers from Northern Forest destined for Australia have been shipped by rail to Oulu in Finland, where they are loaded onto the feeder ship Hara 5. Cargo is exposed to risks. Ideally, all the parties concerned can monitor the merchandise moving from origin to destination. Hara 5 has lost some time in a storm. The ship's Global Fleet Operations Centre in Copenhagen is updated on the situation. If they stick to the original plan, many containers will miss their connection at Zeebrugge. The captain of the Hara 5 and the Operations Centre collaboratively assess the situation, and the captain decides to follow the machine-powered VWT recommendation and increase the ship's passage speed to make the planned arrival time. On arrival at Zeebrugge, the personnel in the port's control room monitor the reloading of the 10 containers onto the Blue Ocean, the ship that will deliver the cargo to Sydney via Singapore. An update on the successful port visit is delivered to the Operations Centre in Copenhagen, and in turn to the ports and each cargo owner. On the way to Singapore, a new incident emerges, a potential wait and delay in the Suez Canal. The VWT immediately identifies the cargo and the affected cargo owners. The VWT flags and alerts the potentially impacted parties. In a virtual situation room hosted in the VWT, the network's members from different organizations and places across the globe discuss the incident instantly based on analysis provided by the VWT. On this occasion, an update arrives that the situation has been resolved. After an on-time arrival in Singapore, the Blue Ocean's reloading of cargo has been monitored and shared with all parties involved, thanks to the VWT. The ship is on schedule for its destination, Sydney. Whether your cargo travels by sea, land or air, the VWT is a new way of ensuring sustainable, safe, secure and on-time transport. We thank our partners for supporting the Virtual Watchtower project.
As you can see from this video, the ambition is quite significant. And they really want to make sure that they have everything for those shippers present in one open and interoperable infrastructure. And what is specific about this is that they are using what we call distributed ledger technology, similar to blockchain, but with less permission required. So that once you have placed your information in the ledger, it cannot be changed. It is fixed, meaning that information about movement of cargo and all these things will be stuck and cannot be tampered with, so that you have a proper recollection of everything that is going on there. The activity also relates to the current European Commission development in data spaces for mobility. I'll not go in detail on those type of things, but the Gaia X initiative that I indicated very early on here is one example of these types of activities. The decentralized identifiers, decentralization is something which is important in this case, and the organization IOTA has created what they call the twin architecture for such collaboration, where at the bottom there is an infrastructure services, it's called here. Essentially, that's where the ledgers are, and that's where everything is kept locked and only to be opened by those who have been requested or required to do so. There is a catalog of everything, everybody that is there, either for the complete network or there are a number of individual nodes that is sort of making up this network. And a company may then be connected to a node only or to the network. Information systems may be what they call native solutions, or they may be requiring an adapter. And the example that I've seen when the people were demonstrating this activity, one of the existing IT systems that were being used in the process of following cargo from Sweden to Singapore, that software was made by Transporeon, while on another twin node, the port community system in Rotterdam was connected with also a twin adapter. The concept is so new that native twin solutions are hard to come back by, but the idea here is then to create an environment for interaction and collaboration in a very decentralized but coherent and governed infrastructure. The Nexus project, whom you all know, I would assume, also had an approach to collaboration and sharing information. And that is in the capability called the Open Data Collaboration Platform, which now is entering into a state where it will be used by ports in Portugal. The exact time of really putting it to large use is probably known better than by my Malo colleagues in Lisbon than myself. But the reasoning behind this is very much the same as the reasoning behind the twin activity, namely that it's fragmented, lacking total visibility, and systems are disconnected. That leads to situations whereby we are not necessarily being efficient as we should be. It is then a federated platform connecting all actors in a complete supply chain or logistics operation, all types of stakeholders, ports, authorities, transport and logistics providers, and others if needed. When we say federated by design, means that data do not leave the owner. The open platform is essentially only a quote pointer to data and a mechanism for people to subscribe to information given rules and regulations defined by the owner. The idea here is that there will be capabilities for, shall we say, harmonizing information in this, so that the type of conversions I indicated when I showed the picture about the e-delivery platform is essentially being taken place inside the collaboration platform, so that data owners and users do not have to worry about these types of format challenges, shall we say. The platform both have data and applications, and users may be able to subscribe to both. There will be providers of data, and as we see here, they are all the type of companies and entities that are developed and related to port activities in this, for all practical purposes, for all type of logistics operations. And the consumers can be anybody, again, those that are developing new solutions, the people in the logistics community operationally, and or researchers who would like to use the data for creating new knowledge. And some of the information in the Nexus Open Data Platform will be public. Others will be restricted, meaning that you can subscribe to them without any, shall we say, restriction other than you have to pay. But there may also be information of a strategic nature that you only will be sharing by invitation only. Only the people you really trust, you may be able to show this or share information. And the capabilities and the mechanisms in the open data platform is really taking care of security on these levels. As we have observed over time here, things in container shipping are not, she would say, as fluent as we should think, because what we can see from the table in the bottom of this illustration here is that there is essentially little relationship between the published schedules of ships and the actual schedules of the same ships. And pre-COVID, ships were on the average 4 days delayed compared to what was published in the schedule. That has been changing and is probably again approaching the same situation as pre-COVID, but with a increased situation of disturbance, both relating to incidents by man, like the blockage of the Suez Canal by the Evergreen ship, the problems in the Red Sea by the Houthis, and other geopolitical incidents and activities, is really making the situation not necessarily better. Meaning that planning a complete end-to-end transport while the cargo still is in Asia will probably require a lot of changes once the ship approaches Europe, unless you have taken a different approach. And one such different approach is what you called synchromodality. And it was invented in the port of Rotterdam because they were sick and tired of having to reorganize hinterland transport because ships were never on time. And what it really means is that you are delaying onward transportation as much as possible, only doing it when you are pretty sure that the vessel will arrive at the time that you can take seriously. And okay, here I should have had a video, which I will not get back to, but the whole idea is that you will do, as I said, you will wait until the ship is close to the shore before you are actually booking the detailed services for hinterland transportation. And they may not necessarily be as you thought you should have done when the cargo was in Asia. The principle of synchromodality has becoming more and more important in future thinking about logistic networks. On Monday, Jaakko was presenting the so-called 3M solution, which is a network of collaborating hubs in Europe. And the whole idea here is that you do not previously define the end-to-end path for any cargo item. You are making sure that those decisions can be taken in a hub. And that is a way of thinking which is more and more important as we are seeing that in modern logistics, we have climate and other effects creating disruptions and disturbances in traditional ways of moving goods. A good example is that a couple of years ago, a large part of Germany, Belgium, and Netherlands was suddenly flooded quite unexpectedly. This is the type of situation you have to deal with if you are going to let cargo flow without too many delays and disruptions. And that means that you have to be extremely flexible relating to how and when you are deciding how the goods is supposed to move. And by delegating such decisions to hubs, then that flexibility is in place. And the ECT terminal in Rotterdam is using these types of activities on a daily basis, making sure that cargo never stops at the terminal, but can go through to hinterland activities immediately after arrival of the ship. Finally, I have to brag a bit because we just formed a new company here, and our business idea in this company called Chasky is really based on these observation, namely that schedules are unreliable. And what we are aiming to do here is that we are at least making these unreliable schedules predictable, meaning that we will be using our experience since the last 25 years to really make sure that when you are getting into an end-to-end planning situation, your ability to properly plan efficiently, even in cases where you are now waiting until ship is almost there, the predictability and the information you will have at your fingertips, so to speak, will be significantly more exact. Then,
thank you, Jan.
Questions, please.
Thank you again for your excellent and very relevant presentation. You are clearly explained how visibility can act as a strategic tool based on data, standards, and cooperation. Very, very, very impressive. So we're gonna start with the questions and comments. I see Jaco puts in the chat some. I believe, Jan, you can read, or you need it.
Yeah, Jaco observed a mistake that I made, because at one page, at one place I was using mixing up control and input. So yes, status is an input, and plan is something that you control against, and then you make decision on that basis. You also asked about twin. The data stays at the source.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just see if I can read the final comment of Jaco here.
The final is, so what about JIT, or just-in-time arrival process? Should that not enable planning the connecting transport much longer in advance?
Let me just answer the interoperability question of Jaco here. And the whole idea is that users shall not really bother. All of those things, converting between formats, shall be done invisible to any user of that information. So they shall only be able to keep with the format that they are currently using in their own internal solutions. When it comes to just-in-time shipping, that's another matter. Obviously, it is a way to make sure that ships do not wait, that the part of the problem with delays and unexpected waiting times are gone. But from a visibility point of view, they will require similar things, although they are more concerned with information about the vessel than information about the cargo in the vessel. So the just-in-time activity, just-in-time relationship between port and ship in the just-in-time context is more about the vessel itself, not about the cargo. So okay. Visibility about cargo is a different kettle of fish. And as I indicated previously here, in many situations, the operator of the ship does not know what cargo is on board. It knows the types of cargo, whether it's dangerous, etc., so that it can be placed in the ship without any possibility of any accidents and dangerous situations. But they normally do not know exactly which cargo items in each box on each vessel.
And that is all correct, but if I may clarify, you make an appointment to, as a vessel, to be at a berth at a specific point in time, and that is like almost a mutual commitment. So as you set the date and times associated with that appointment can be used with reasonable accuracy if you use something like your Chasqui or other similar services to then start planning your connecting transport. That was the background to the question. I don't think you answered that one particularly, but you are right. Cargo is not of the interest of the vessel owner, but a good reliable date and time for when the vessel will be unloaded would be very interesting for the beneficial cargo owner, I think.
Yes.
We have another question from Maria Sabino. How does open data contributes to dynamization of the open innovation process in the port ecosystem?
Let me see. The more you know, the more efficient you may be. I think is the answer to the situation where the open data contribute to dynamization of open information process in the port ecosystems. You really need to be able to know what exactly happened in order to make an improvement. And for those who need to be active in improving both knowledge and capabilities, you need to know exactly, you need to have a record of current operations as they are. And the idea is at least that the open data collaboration platform will enable such information in the form of, or in communicating to researchers, etc. Information may be anonymized, but at least the whole idea is that in addition to making everyday operations more efficient, the knowledge that can be generated from this type of information will also enable innovation to be significantly different.
Mm-hmm. We have another one from André Mestre. What are some of the common protocols that's data validation? And if the data sets have colliding entries, is it manual or there are automatic systems that mitigate issues that pass through validation checks?
As we are developing, and Jaakko can probably answer this even better than I can, but at least the whole idea about the activities in DTLF and the projects like Federated is that you are not only looking at the details on syntax, you're definitely also looking at semantics, meaning that the ability then to have tools that enable much more automatic transfer between formats, data sets taking from one format to another, can be much more automated as we go forward than it has to be in the past. Obviously, even if you are using these tools, you may check manually whether everything works, but ideally, at least, the bulk of the matter should be automatic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think the word colliding is the key word in his question. So let's say we have an estimated time of arrival for a vessel. That data may come from different sources, and they may have a different ETA. So in one, let's say, set of information, you have conflicting information about a specific data point that you are interested in. And then I think platforms like Chasqui would probably have some level of automatic resolution. But I think that's really the main question that Andre was asking about. Even if you do know exactly the meaning of the data element, and you can also automatically interpret it because the format and syntax is well known, then how do you resolve these logical conflicts that you get conflicting information, for instance, about the ETA of the vessel?
This brings the issue of the protocol optimization, no?
Yes, and but again, it's really about which source do you actually trust. So if you have two trustworthy sources that are providing conflicting information, obviously there has to be some form of manual intervention somewhere to find out which is really the one that has the correct information. But I think in the general sense, it's about which information do you trust more.
The next one is again from Maria Sabino. Is there a correlation between open? Is the same? Is different. Is there a correlation between the open data governance maturity and the effectiveness of open innovation process in smart ports?
I don't know.
That question.
Is it possible to elaborate a bit on that one?
I'm going to open, Maria, do you want to let me put online? Try. Maria, you have the microphone. You can speak. Ozzy?
So,
Okay.
hi, Tore. How are you? Thank you for answering the last question. And these questions means, first, are there way to measure the maturity of governance of open data governance, first? And second, what is the correlation between the maturity of open data governance? Because you are dealing with open data, and we know the challenge of getting data from the whole ecosystem. So must have a governance, and what's the maturity and what's the correlation between the maturity and the effectiveness of using this open data for the open innovation processes?
Again, I don't really have an answer for that.
Okay.
The governance of open data in itself is something that requires a bit of thinking, and in the relationship with the open data collaboration platform in Synchromodality, for example, in Nexus, the governance of the data is really up to the owner of the data. There is really no, she was a general governance other than you are abiding to the rules of making data available. But since the platform itself does not contain the data, it's only contained pointers to data, the governance and the control of the information resides with the owner of that information. And that owner of information also defines under which circumstances can anybody else actually look at that information. So governance is definitely decentralized, but everybody has to work within, she was a set of rules so that things may eventually become interoperable. How that relates to the innovation processes, I really have no idea, other than, as I said earlier on, if you have available to you information about all the processes of the port, and for that matter, complete end-to-end supply chains, and those informations are credible in the form that they are observations of events and documents and all these things, then you have the ability to see what if we change these, what if we change those, and then see the effects that will have on the type of information that is being generated. But the governance aspect in itself, I don't really have an impact, but availability of information about processes is definitely going to have an impact.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much.
So, thank you, Jose. The next one is Anif. Anif brings the problem of the fire on the deck in the recent ships we see in the news. And then he asks who is responsible to load the container and to confirm not loading flammable or fire or explosion hazardous materials in the container ship if the ship personnel do not aware about the cargo inside these containers.
As I said, what the ship, first of all, it's the ship operator, essentially the master of the ship, who is responsible for this. And in order to do that process properly, the information about what type of cargo is inside is necessary for the ship to know, so that dangerous cargo that potentially can cause these types of events that you indicated here, that is avoided as much as possible. So information about cargo type is absolutely necessary so that these situations are being taken care of when you are carefully planning the how to load containers onto the vessel, ensuring that cargo that potentially might be dangerous if mixed are staying as far away together as possible. So all of that is taking care of in the loading planning operations of the ship operator.
Jacob.
Yeah, if I may add. So, Jan Tore, you already mentioned that in this new approach, or it's not really new, but it will be implemented far more widely going forward. That's the whole point. We will exchange pointers to information rather than the data itself. And that's really important because if you have like a relay system where you give the data to the next guy, you probably end up in a Chinese whispers game where the actual meaning or information that was available at first gets lost along the way. And then as a result, those that load the ship and those that operate the ship don't even know that there is this kind of dangerous cargo on board. Now, if we are starting to just exchange pointers to information, such as a pointer to the cargo owner's information, where all of the details about the products that are in that container may be found, then everybody further downstream from the beneficial cargo owner can get to that information and make the right decision about where to stow these containers, and also what needs to happen in case, as a ship operator, you ran into a storm and there may be some potential damage to those containers. What you need to do to ensure no further damage. That's the key thing. Information, the reliable information, is always accessible through the pointers at the source. The most reliable information, the most complete information that's available anywhere.
Do you think about the EBL system when it starts to be using everywhere? That can resolve some of these issues because it's going to be inside not just the BL, but all the, or could have inside any documents we needed for this process?
Ideally, you're right, the EBL would have those pointers that you would need. and then you can go to the source of the information. I believe that the current EBL are electronic versions of the same data sets that are currently on paper, or a little more than what's currently available on the paper. But I'm completely with you, Luis. Going forward, it should really also enable this linked data to be retrieved from the original source, rather than being an electronic version of the Chinese whispers that we currently engage in.
Okay, thanks. The next one is Gilvan Lima. Gilvan Lima is a great friend, so I'm gonna open the exception. So I'm gonna give the micro. Gilvan, can you make your question? Hello, Gilvan?
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Gilvan.
Oh, yes.
Oh, hi, Jan. How good? In fact, I'm worried about when you talk about this system to concentrate all the info about the schedules and all the informations about the cargo. My question is, do you think that will be possible to persuade, to convince all the stakeholders to share the proper information, so we will be able to collect them and prepare them to take the right decisions in the right time for this cargo safety program? Okay.
Data sharing
Yeah.
is always a challenge, because there are at least two very different ways of looking at it. One is the simple thing, which is technological, namely making sure that data from Luis to me can be transmitted to me or to anybody else, regardless of what format he uses and I uses. The key question here is nothing to do with technicalities. It's to do with strategy and, if you would say, psychology. And if I don't trust you, Gilvan,
Yes.
I will never share anything with you.
Yes.
So much of this is really about trust. Who do you trust? Who do you not trust? And between people that are trustworthy, the type of situations you're talking about is likely to become better and better. The key challenge is trying to understand who can you actually trust. And I think as we are currently observing, looking at the news from day to day, the answer to that question becomes more and more difficult.
I agree with you.
So psychologically speaking, I cannot say that I have a very good answer for you. Technologically speaking and technically speaking, it's, quote, straightforward, unquote.
Thank you very much, Ian. I agree with you 100%.
We have a last one. I believe it's from... No? The big one.
Hanif, another question here.
Yeah. Hanif. I'm going to put micro in Hanif too. I believe he's going to enjoy to speak with Jan. Give me just 1 second. Hanif, you can speak. Hanif.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Hanif. In the presentation, actually, I heard that the ship crew are it is not necessary for them to know details about the cargo inside the containers. So, but I know as a seafarers, I know that especially the captain and the deck officer, they are the responsible for the ship safety. And you know that a lot of fire on deck is happening nowadays, especially for the battery type of cargo. And sometimes I think the ship owner, the ship crew, they don't know about the cargo, and especially the loading plan. Actually, I work in the container ship during my training time in 25 years ago. So then I just switched to the tanker ship. So I found that the container loading is by the different party, is the third party, but captain or chief officer, they can change it if they find that this container have the flammable cargo and this must be on the top side of the deck, or they can argue for it. So for me,
I agree with that completely. And when I said that you use this example that you now have on your screen, I hope, namely that the ship, the Coprar, the loading list, normally don't tell anything about the content of the cargo. That
Yes.
is the way it used to be. And I am pretty sure that as we go forward, and we have more information easily available, information about what cargo is on board a ship must be known by the ship, by the crew on the ship. Absolutely, totally. If they do not know, they cannot really fulfill the job properly.
Yeah. Thank you, Tore. That was my concern actually.
Thank you. And if I believe Jaco knows something, Jaco, you want to interview?
Yeah, so basically it's a slight elaboration of what Jan Tore already said. So there is definitely interest with terminal operators and shipping lines to do the right thing if they have the information about hazardous materials in those containers. They just don't always get that. I think we're in a similar scenario now where in the past the weights of containers was very unreliable information. That caused huge issues as well. Now we have the verified gross mass information exchange that's mandated and it's enforced. And I'm actually hoping that something similar may be in our near future when it comes to the provision of hazardous materials information as well. It may be a bit more difficult to implement, but I'm certainly hoping that that will be part of things, because I completely agree. The ship should not be at risk simply because people are, quote unquote, too lazy to provide the right information to do things right.
Thank you, Jaco. I believe we don't have any more questions nor comments. It was a great session, I may say, and thank you all for your participation and excellent questions. Jan, once again, our sincere thanks for your clarity and strategic insights. We will continue this conversation in the future sessions, I believe, of NTalks in the third edition. So I hope all of you come next week for the next NTalks. Jan, once again, thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone.